Ms. Kenny, this year is so important. This is the half point year for achieving SDGs. So how would you evaluate the current progress of SDGs in China and around the world? And what more work do you think should be done for achieving SDGs by 2030?
Well, to be very honest, I would say that the world is way off track with the SDGs. Of course, COVID happened, we've had wars, we've had a lot of climate shocks, all of these things that maybe when we first designed the SDGs, we hadn't quite anticipated. All these multiple shocks coming in at the same time. Now for China, the number and the one that really amazes me is the target against extreme income poverty. And China has really taken that head on and been able to address it to the point of eliminating extreme income poverty. Now for the region, if I look at Asia Pacific, it's about 1.5 billion people who have been lifted out of extreme income poverty. Half of that comes from China. So the region has a lot to learn, the world has a lot to learn on that specific target. But then there are many, many other targets and goals. And I think we've got to be very persistent and determined to use the next 7 years very wisely in order to get there.
In recent years, China has officially announced the elimination of absolute poverty, and with the poverty eradication being one of the primary objectives of the 2030 agenda. Ms. Kenny, I would like to know how would you see China's progress in this regard, and what lessons do you think can be shared with other countries from China?
This specific poverty target is a really important one because it has a knock-on effect on so many other SDGs as well. So already you can see that by moving people out of, not just out of absolute and extreme poverty, but they've got to move now into middle class. And that is a lesson which says you can never take your eyes off, right? The battle is not over because there's going to be more turbulence in our world. You don't want people falling back again into poverty. A lot of the rural infrastructure works that China was able to provide in the country. This is something other countries are looking at and saying, okay, how do we make sure we go for much more extensive rural infrastructure? If you look at the social protection schemes that China has put in place, this again is something that others will look at.
We just learned that you just visit Dongying city in Shandong province to learn about local ecological environment and the biodiversity protection. Are there any unforgettable moments during your trip? How do you see the biodiversity protection in China, and how does it connect it to the sustainable development?
The whole visit was unforgettable. You have to see it for yourself. The SDGs are not going to be achieved globally. They're a very local story. So when I look at a place like Dongying that has completely changed the way it values nature and the environment. For too long, we have separated actions on climate change with actions on biodiversity. The two things are linked. If you protect mangroves, if you protect forests, you protect wetlands, like what they're doing in Dongying, these carbon sinks will help significantly to also reach those dual climate goals, the dual carbon goals that China says we're going to get to. So the two things to me, when I saw how it was being addressed at the local level, it really gave me hope for the global level.
The COP28 soon will be held. Ms. Kenny, I would like to know, how do you see China's progress in low carbon transition? How do you think China can play the bigger role in this regard?
It is a country that has put some very bold, ambitious carbon reduction targets. Now, at the same time, when you understand that China is also the place where all the green technology, particularly renewable energy in solar and wind, the largest installed capacity today globally is in China. Because the direction is very clear, then the lessons learned from China will help the world. China's story heading into COP 28 is going to be absolutely critical. Everyone's going to be watching and learning from China, and I think China must then also learn from others. Because in some sectors, maybe some countries have done very well. And I think when you put this together, you will have the story.
The recently launched the 23rd Asia-Pacific Human Development Report. It highlights the progress, disparity, and disruption transcend the borders in the Asia-Pacific region. How would you like to share your view in this regard?
So the report closes by looking at good practices around our region and says there are three things that make a big difference. The first is countries that put people first as their investment. People's health, their education, their capabilities. Those countries you can see keep a steadier rate of growth. Then the second big issue that we look at is what happens when you have a people-centered effort, but you haven't yet greened your economy. So this whole story of looking at future generations, but looking at it from what can you do to protect your natural resources and use that wealth to grow at the same time. So the sustainability issue. And the last big one is the governance and leadership in countries. So the report takes a lot of examples of very real life, practical ways of doing things, pulls it together, and hopefully shows what can work better for the right kind of development for people in our region.
Thank you so much, Madam.
Thank you so much.